A 14-year-old girl leaves a Cleveland pool party on a summer evening in 2007, just a 10-minute walk to her aunt's house. She never makes it. Days later, her family receives a chilling phone call. A trembling voice says, "Don't worry, I'm okay." But was it really Ashley? Or something far darker? The summer of 2007 settled heavy over Cleveland, Ohio. The air shimmered with heat rising off asphalt, and children's laughter echoed across neighborhood pools, carrying that familiar rhythm of a carefree July. Yet, in one house on the city's near west side, silence was about to become a haunting soundtrack. Ashley Summers was only 14, a teenage girl with dark brown hair that caught sunlight like strands of copper, and a smile that her friends swore could brighten even the dullest afternoon. She was the kind of girl who balanced between childhood and adulthood. Still fond of pool parties and sleepovers, but old enough to want her independence. On July 6th, she vanished. No one expected the day to become one that Cleveland would never forget. It began like so many others. Neighborhood kids splashing water, trading jokes, music playing from someone's tinny speaker. But by nightfall, Ashley's name would be whispered with fear, printed on posters, and etched into the memory of every family who knew how quickly joy can turn into dread. Neighbors recalled seeing her walk down Madison Avenue, close to West 96th Street. The sun was sinking low, shadows stretching across cracked sidewalks. Some thought she was headed toward her aunt's house, a place familiar and safe, barely 10 minutes away. But as dusk folded into night, Ashley never arrived. That evening, Cleveland's streets looked ordinary. Cars parked in driveways, porch lights flicking on, parents calling their kids home for dinner. No one could have guessed that one of those homes would remain waiting, forever unanswered. What began as another hot summer day ended with a mother's worst nightmare, her daughter, gone without a trace, and so begins a mystery that would span decades, drawing in neighbors, police, federal agents, and desperate family members. Because the story of Ashley Summers is not just about one girl. It is about how a city held its breath, how time stretched into years of unanswered questions, and how, even today, Cleveland still waits for the child who walked down a street one summer night and disappeared into silence. Behind every missing child's face on a poster is a family. Complex, imperfect, and human. For Ashley Summers, home was never without its storms. She was raised by her mother, Jennifer, in a small house not far from Cleveland's industrial heart. Money was tight, and tempers sometimes shorter than either of them wished. Yet for all their arguments, love threaded through their lives, unspoken but powerful. That July morning began like so many others. Jennifer woke early, her mind already tangled with work and bills. Ashley, meanwhile, carried the restless energy of adolescence. She wanted freedom, wanted to carve out her own identity. On that morning, the tension between them boiled over. Ashley had gotten a tattoo, a small heart etched onto her arm with the name Jean inside it. For Jennifer, it wasn't just about the ink. It was about control, about a young girl racing too quickly into adulthood. The argument was sharp, words exchanged that both would regret. In the heat of anger, Jennifer broke Ashley's cell phone, snapping the lifeline that tethered daughter to mother. Neighbors later remembered the slam of the front door, the stubborn silence that followed. Arguments between mothers and teenage daughters aren't unusual. Most fade by dinner, replaced by apologies or uneasy truces. But this time, the silence would stretch far longer. Jennifer's relatives noticed the change in Ashley in the weeks leading up to that day. She was fiercely independent, more secretive than before, and had begun spending time with friends her mother didn't always approve of. Still, Ashley remained a child at heart. Laughing loudly with cousins, showing off her new bathing suit for the pool, sketching in notebooks when she thought no one was watching. Family dynamics are rarely black and white. For Jennifer, the guilt of that morning would replay endlessly. The broken phone, the angry words, the slammed door. If only she had paused. If only she had said something different. In the days to come, Jennifer would cling to those last exchanges, Torn between regret and the fragile hope that Ashley would walk back through the door, it's a detail that has haunted investigators too. Because when a teenager disappears after conflict at home, questions multiply. Did she run away? Did anger push her into danger? Or was the fight just an ordinary clash that tragically coincided with something far darker waiting outside? For the Summers family, the argument was never just about a tattoo. It became a dividing line in memory. The last normal morning they would ever have. July 6th, 2007. For most of Cleveland, it was just another blistering summer Friday. For Ashley Summers, it started with a pool party. A gathering of friends that promised laughter, splashes, and the brief escape from the heat that pressed down on the city. Neighbors remembered the sound of kids shrieking with joy as they cannonballed into the water. Music played faintly from a scratched CD player, and Ashley, in her bright swimsuit, blended easily into the carefree chaos. She laughed, splashed, and for a while, the argument with her mother seemed to belong to another world. As the afternoon slipped toward evening, Ashley decided to leave. She wrapped herself in a towel, pulled on her shorts, and told a friend she was heading to her aunt's house. The walk was short. Barely 10 minutes down familiar streets she had walked countless times before. Everyone assumed she would be safe. The sun was beginning its slow descent, painting the sky in streaks of orange and purple. On Madison Avenue, cars rolled past with their windows down, music drifting into the humid air. A couple of neighbors saw Ashley walking along West 96th Street. She didn't look worried. She wasn't in a hurry. Just a teenager cutting across a city block on her way to someone who loved her. But that simple walk, so ordinary, became a vanishing act. Her aunt later said she kept glancing at the clock. 10 minutes came and went, then 20, then an hour. By the time the sky had darkened fully, unease turned into dread. Ashley never arrived. What makes it all the more haunting is how short the distance was. Less than a mile, a straight shot of sidewalks and stop signs. Somewhere along that stretch, in the span of minutes, Ashley Summers disappeared. For investigators, that detail became both a clue and a torment. A walk of 10 minutes is also a walk of opportunity. Anyone with ill intent could have spotted her, a passing car, a stranger offering a ride, or perhaps someone she already knew, someone she trusted enough to step off the path for. Later, residents of the neighborhood would struggle with their memories. A dark sedan parked strangely, a figure leaning against a fence, a dog barking frantically as if sensing something unseen. Nothing solid, nothing provable. Just fragments of an evening where normal life and nightmare blurred together, and as the streetlights flickered on, Ashley Summers, just 14, just a child, was gone. As night fell over Cleveland, Jennifer Summers sat by the front window, waiting. At first, she told herself not to panic. Teenagers lost track of time. Maybe Ashley had stopped to talk with a friend. Maybe she had gone somewhere else and forgotten to call. But the phone, her phone, was broken, shattered that morning in a moment of anger. Jennifer's chest tightened as the minutes stretched into hours. There was no way for Ashley to reach her, no way for her to say, "I'm safe, I'll be home soon." By 9 o'clock, the silence in the house was suffocating. Jennifer stepped outside, scanning the street. Porch lights glowed warmly from neighbors' homes. Children's bicycles lay abandoned on front lawns, but Ashley was nowhere. She called relatives, hoping Ashley had gone to one of their houses instead. Each time the answer was the same: no, they hadn't seen her. Her aunt, the one Ashley was supposed to visit, kept repeating, "She never came. I thought maybe she decided to go back home." Panic began to crawl into Jennifer's voice. Me too. She drove the streets near Madison Avenue, headlights cutting across alleys, scanning sidewalks, calling Ashley's name into the dark. Neighbors joined in, some holding flashlights, others simply standing on porches, uneasy but not yet grasping the gravity of what was happening. By midnight, the dread was undeniable. Jennifer returned home, sat at the kitchen table, and stared at the broken pieces of Ashley's phone. It was a cruel reminder. Their last conversation had been an argument, Their last moment together, one of anger. Now, with every tick of the clock, that regret deepened into a wound. When she finally called police, she was met with a routine response. 14-year-olds go missing all the time. They said, teenagers run away, especially after fights with parents. The officer's tone was calm, almost dismissive. She'll come back in a day or two. But Jennifer knew her daughter. Ashley might have been rebellious, but she wasn't reckless. And she had never spent a night away without telling someone. As dawn broke the next morning, Jennifer realized with chilling certainty, this wasn't a runaway story. Something was terribly wrong. Family members gathered at the house, their faces tight with worry. Her grandmother whispered prayers. Her cousins tried to retrace Ashley's steps, walking the blocks where she was last seen. Every corner, every alley seemed to echo the same unbearable truth. Ashley had vanished. What had begun as a warm summer evening had turned into a mother's worst nightmare. And though Jennifer clung to the hope that Ashley would walk back through that door, deep down, she already felt it. That her daughter was in danger, and that nothing would ever be the same again. Days passed, and the Summers family lived in a haze of fear and sleepless nights. Posters with Ashley's face began to appear on telephone poles and gas station windows. Each knock on the door, each ringing phone carried the unbearable question, would this be the moment they heard from her? Then, one evening, the phone rang. Jennifer grabbed it so fast she nearly dropped the receiver. On the other end was a girl's voice. Thin, shaky, but familiar. Don't worry, it said. I'm okay. Jennifer froze. Her heart slammed against her chest. She knew that voice. It was Ashley. Baby, where are you? Please, just tell me where you are. I'll come get you. But before she could finish, the line went dead. Silence hummed in the empty air. She tried calling back. Nothing. No caller ID. No trace. Relatives who were in the room swore it sounded just like Ashley. The way she drew out certain words, the timbre of her voice. It was unmistakable. But others wondered, was it really her? Could someone have been imitating her? Or was Ashley being forced to say those words under duress? The police were notified immediately. Investigators attempted to trace the call, but it had been too brief, too sudden. Technology in 2007 couldn't do what it can now. The number couldn't be tracked. The line couldn't be traced. All they had was that chilling fragment of a message. For Jennifer, the call brought both hope and torment. If it was Ashley, she was alive. But where? And with whom? Why didn't she say more? Why didn't she call again? Some relatives clung to it as proof Ashley had run away by choice, that she would come back when she was ready. Others believed the opposite, that the call was a sign she was being held, allowed just one desperate chance to reach out before being silenced again. Neighbors whispered about it. The story of the mysterious phone call spread quickly, becoming one more piece of the puzzle that no one could solve. Was Ashley reaching out for help? Or was it a cruel trick meant to give false hope? For Jennifer, the sound of her daughter's voice replayed endlessly in her mind. The words were simple, but they carried a weight she could not escape. Don't worry, I'm okay. But mothers know. Jennifer knew. Her daughter was not okay. When the police first took Ashley's case, their approach was routine. Almost mechanical. To them, a 14-year-old girl who had argued with her mother, stormed out, and then called home a few days later, fit neatly into one category, a runaway. Officers told Jennifer to stay calm, to give it time. She'll come back when she's ready, they assured. Kids her age do this all the time. But the Summers family knew better. This wasn't like Ashley. She didn't have money. She didn't have a working phone. She hadn't even packed clothes or belongings. And despite her teenage rebellion, she had always come home at the end of the day. Still, in those critical first days, law enforcement treated Ashley's disappearance as voluntary. There was no immediate search grid, no door-to-door canvassing, no Amber Alert flashing across highways. Precious hours slipped away. Hours that might have meant the difference between finding her or losing her forever. Jennifer grew frantic. She drove through neighborhoods, calling Ashley's name, searching alleys and abandoned lots. Friends and relatives stapled flyers to utility poles, their fingers raw from the effort. Yet official help remained limited. Some officers even suggested Jennifer's broken relationship with Ashley explained everything. Teenagers run off when home life gets rough, one investigator remarked, as though that were enough to close the case. But there were troubling details that didn't fit the runaway narrative. Ashley left the pool party with the clear intention of walking to her aunt's house. Just 10 minutes away, she never arrived. If she wanted to run away, why lie about where she was going? Why not take personal items or ask a trusted friend for help? And then there was the call. That brief, trembling voice that said, "Don't worry, I'm okay." It didn't sound like a girl who had chosen freedom. It sounded like a girl trapped in something she couldn't explain. As weeks turned into months, the file on Ashley Summers grew thin, and hope among the police seemed to wither. To them, it was just another name in a binder of missing teens, a case that would likely solve itself or fade into statistics. But for the family, and for the Cleveland neighborhood that had watched Ashley grow up, it was something much darker. They believed Ashley hadn't left by choice. They believed she had been taken, and with every day that passed, the city's silence felt heavier, as though somewhere out there, behind locked doors and shuttered windows, Ashley's story was being smothered while the world carried on. As the weeks bled into months, the Summers family clung desperately to anything that resembled a lead, and slowly, whispers began to emerge from the neighborhood. A woman who lived on West 96th Street told police she thought she had seen Ashley walking with two older boys on the night she disappeared. She couldn't place their names, only that they seemed out of place. Too old to be hanging around with a 14-year-old girl. Another neighbor recalled a dark sedan parked strangely along the curb that evening, its engine idling though no one ever saw who was inside. There were rumors, too. Some said Ashley had been spotted at a convenience store several blocks away, browsing candy bars with a group of teenagers. Others insisted they saw her near the West Side Market, slipping into the crowd before anyone could call out her name. But each supposed sighting unraveled under scrutiny. The descriptions never quite matched. Timelines conflicted. And without photographs or hard evidence, they remained nothing more than fragments of memory, half-truths blurred by time and fear. Still, one detail lingered in investigators' notes. The car. Multiple residents remembered seeing a dark-colored vehicle. Some swore it was a Chevy, others thought a Ford. Circling the block that same evening. In one account, the car slowed near Ashley, as though someone inside had called out to her. If true, it suggested something sinister. Ashley may have stepped willingly into a vehicle she recognized. Jennifer obsessed over those details. Was it someone Ashley knew? A friend's older brother? A neighbor who had earned her trust? The idea tormented her. That Ashley might have been tricked not by force, but by familiarity. The rumors created a kind of collective paranoia in Cleveland. Parents tightened curfews. Neighbors watched strangers with suspicion. The ordinary rhythm of the street. Children riding bikes, teens hanging out on corners. Now carried an undertone of fear. Police followed up on the tips, but none led anywhere solid. For every person who claimed to see Ashley, another swore it was a case of mistaken identity. And as summer gave way to fall, the trail grew colder. For Jennifer, each new rumor was a double-edged sword. Hope would flare briefly. Maybe Ashley was still close. Maybe she was trying to get back. But when every lead collapsed, the disappointment was crushing. It was as if Ashley existed only in the in-between, glimpsed but never truly found. And beneath it all, a haunting possibility grew stronger. Ashley hadn't simply wandered off. Something darker had reached into that neighborhood, taken her from the sidewalk, and vanished without leaving a single trace behind. By 2008, the Summers family had endured a year of aching silence. Ashley's face still stared out from flyers weathered by rain, but tips had slowed to almost nothing. It felt as though the city had begun to move on. Then came a revelation that twisted the knife deeper. In May of 2013, 5 years after Ashley vanished, Cleveland was rocked by the discovery of three missing women: Amanda Berry, Gina DeJesus, and Michelle Knight. Found alive after years of captivity inside the home of Ariel Castro, just a few miles from where Ashley had last been seen. The news sent shockwaves through the community. Parents clutched their children tighter. Survivors were embraced as miracles. And for the Summers family, a chilling question surfaced. Could Ashley have been one of them? Investigators considered it. The geographic overlap was undeniable. Ashley's last known location was close to Castro's hunting grounds. She had been about the same age as his other victims when she disappeared. For a moment, hope surged. The idea that maybe, just maybe, Ashley was still alive, hidden inside that nightmare house. But when the rescued women were interviewed, the truth was devastating. None of them had ever seen Ashley. She wasn't there. The disappointment was unbearable. It was as if the universe had dangled salvation just within reach, only to snatch it away. Jennifer's tears that day were not just for her daughter, but for the realization that even in the most shocking rescue in Cleveland's history, Ashley remained lost. The FBI redoubled their efforts, combing through old files, re-interviewing witnesses, and comparing Ashley's disappearance to other abduction patterns. Some agents privately admitted the timing and location were too close to ignore. They believed Ashley might have fallen prey to another predator operating in the same area. Someone who slipped through the cracks while the city's attention focused on Castro. Others held on to a darker suspicion that Ashley had, in fact, crossed paths with Castro himself, but at a time or in a way no one could ever prove. For the community, the eerie parallel kept Ashley's story alive. People whispered her name alongside the survivors, wondering why fate had spared some and not others. The what-ifs hung heavy in the air, and for Jennifer, it became an unbearable obsession. She replayed the moment she heard her daughter's voice on the phone. The words, "Don't worry, I'm okay," and asked herself if Ashley had been trying to hint at her captivity all along. The discovery of the three women was a miracle for Cleveland. But for the Summers family, it was also a cruel reminder. Even miracles sometimes leave someone behind. Years after Ashley's disappearance, the Summers household was no longer the same. The walls that once echoed with teenage chatter and slammed doors had grown quiet, heavy with absence. Every photograph of Ashley, her in a pink hoodie, her arms folded shyly at a birthday party, her smile caught mid-laugh, became more like a shrine than a memory. Jennifer lived with two kinds of pain, grief and guilt. She replayed the argument from that morning over and over, wondering if it had somehow set everything in motion. Had she pushed her daughter away at the worst possible time? If Ashley had been upset, did that make her more vulnerable to someone waiting in the shadows? The broken phone sat in a drawer for years, a jagged reminder of the last normal moment they had together. Jennifer sometimes held its cracked pieces in her hand like a relic, as though by touching it, she could bridge the distance between then and now. Ashley's grandmother became the family's backbone. She taped missing posters to her refrigerator, the ink fading but never replaced. "As long as she's out there," she said, "this picture stays right here." Every holiday, she set an extra plate at the table, a silent invitation for Ashley to come home. Her aunt kept the porch light on for months, a beacon on West 96th Street that neighbors whispered about. It wasn't just a light anymore. It was a plea, shining into the night in case Ashley somehow found her way back. But hope is cruel when it lingers too long. Cousins who had once been Ashley's closest companions graduated, married, had children. Each milestone felt incomplete, as though Ashley should have been there, laughing in the photos, holding the babies, living the life that was stolen from her. Jennifer sank deeper into the rituals of waiting. Every time the phone rang late at night, she felt her heart leap. Every knock on the door made her wonder if this was the moment her daughter had finally come home. But every time, it wasn't. Neighbors noticed how Jennifer aged quickly. Her hair grayed earlier than it should have. The lines around her eyes deepened. People said she looked like someone carrying a weight that never shifted, no matter how many years passed. What hurt the most wasn't just the absence. It was the silence. There were no more phone calls, no more clues, nothing to chase, just the hollow echo of what once was. And so, in the Summers home, time did not heal, it only stretched, pulling Jennifer and her family further from the last day they saw Ashley, and further still from any answers that might one day explain why she never came back. Cleveland is a city that remembers. When one of its children disappears, the loss ripples far beyond a single household. Ashley's face didn't just haunt her family. It became part of the fabric of her community. In the weeks after her disappearance, telephone poles bloomed with posters. Her brown eyes stared out from gas stations, grocery stores, school bulletin boards. People who had never met her carried her image in their minds, as though keeping watch for a stranger's child had suddenly become everyone's responsibility. At Ashley's middle school, teachers left her desk untouched for months. A pink notebook still sat inside, its pages filled with doodles and half-finished assignments. Students whispered when they walked past, as if the empty seat itself carried her presence. Some classmates admitted they would glance at the door each morning, half expecting her to walk in late with an easy excuse about missing the bus. Neighborhood gatherings became search parties. Parents who had once only nodded to each other over backyard fences now walked the streets together, flashlights in hand. Volunteers combed through vacant lots, wooded patches, even abandoned houses. Anywhere a desperate hope might lead them. Churches held vigils, the glow of candles casting long shadows across pews as voices lifted in prayer. Some prayed for Ashley's safe return, others prayed for strength for her family. But in every whispered plea, there was also a rising anger. Anger that a child could vanish from a crowded neighborhood without anyone seeing what happened. Local news stations ran segments, sometimes showing home videos of Ashley splashing in sprinklers or laughing at a family picnic. Each clip was a reminder that she wasn't just a name or a statistic. She was a girl with a voice, a laugh, a future, and yet, with time, the city's attention shifted. New stories filled headlines. Other crises demanded focus. The posters grew faded, curling at the edges, some torn down by wind or weather, but in certain corners. At the school bulletin board, on her grandmother's refrigerator, at a corner store that refused to take hers down. Ashley's presence endured. For Cleveland's children, Ashley's disappearance became a cautionary tale. Parents shortened curfews, warned daughters not to walk alone, and told sons to stay close. The familiar sidewalks that had once felt safe now carried an unspoken threat. Years later, older residents would recall that summer as the moment innocence cracked. They would say, "That's when everything changed. That's when we realized even here, in our own streets, darkness could take one of our own." Ashley Summers wasn't just missing. She had become a ghost of Cleveland itself. Her absence lingering in classrooms, churches, and family dinners long after her laughter had been stolen from them. Time is merciless in missing persons cases. Days turn to weeks, weeks to years, and with each passing season, memories blur while hope flickers like a candle against the wind. For Ashley Summers, the years that followed her disappearance were filled not with answers, but with haunting questions. The FBI eventually took over her case. Agents reviewed old police reports, retraced her final steps, and checked her name against databases of Jane Does across the country. They searched hospitals, shelters, even juvenile detention centers. Every time a body was found in Ohio, the Summers family braced themselves, praying it wouldn't match Ashley's description. Each time the dental records didn't match, they felt relief mixed with guilt. Technology offered glimmers of possibility. Age progression photos were released, showing what Ashley might look like at 16, then 18, then 21. Each rendering was eerily familiar. Her same eyes, her same smile, but slightly older, as if time had moved on without her. Jennifer taped every new image to the refrigerator, layering them like a timeline that never truly existed. There were still calls. A stranger claimed to have seen her in West Virginia. Another said she was working under a different name in Indiana. Detectives followed up, but nothing ever held. Every sighting dissolved under the weight of false hope. What never dissolved was Jennifer's determination. She attended every press conference, stood beside FBI agents holding Ashley's photo, and spoke directly to the cameras. If you're out there, Ashley, we love you. Please come home. Her voice would crack, but her message never wavered. Meanwhile, life in Cleveland marched forward. New buildings rose, old shops closed. Children who once knew Ashley grew up, graduated, and started families of their own. But whenever they gathered, someone always mentioned her name. Remember Ashley Summers, they would ask? And silence would follow, because remembering her meant remembering the hole she left behind. Investigators admitted privately that leads had gone cold. Ashley's case remained open, but without new evidence, it sat among thousands of others. Each one a child, a family, a story unfinished. To the world, she became a face in a database. To Cleveland, she remained an unanswered question. For her family, time didn't dull the pain. Birthdays passed with empty chairs at the table. Every summer, the heat brought back memories of the last day they saw her. And each year, Jennifer whispered the same prayer, that somehow, against all odds, her daughter was still alive, waiting to be found. Years later, Ashley Summers was no closer to being found than she had been that July evening in 2007. And yet, the search continued. Not just in Cleveland, but in the hearts of those who refused to let her story fade. It has been more than a decade since Ashley Summers walked down West 96th Street and vanished into the Cleveland summer night. If she is alive today, Ashley would be a grown woman in her 30s. Perhaps with a family of her own, perhaps living quietly under another name. But in her mother's heart, and in the memories of those who loved her, she remains 14 forever. Jennifer still speaks of her in the present tense. She keeps Ashley's belongings tucked neatly in boxes, unable to part with them. Each summer, she attends vigils where candles flicker against the dark, and neighbors gather to whisper her daughter's name. "We won't stop looking," she always says. "We can't stop looking." The FBI continues to keep Ashley's file open. Age-progressed images circulate online, drawing comments from strangers who think they may have seen someone like her. But so far, none have led to answers. The case remains what it has been since that July night in 2007, a question without resolution, a wound without healing. For Cleveland, Ashley's story became more than a single tragedy. It became a mirror reflecting the fragility of safety, the way a child can disappear between one breath and the next. Parents remind their children of her name when they warn them not to walk alone. Teachers pause at the sight of an empty desk, remembering the girl who never came back. And for those who hear her story today, it's impossible not to imagine what it means to wait. For a knock on the door, for a phone call, for footsteps on the porch that never come. Perhaps somewhere, Ashley is alive, holding on to her own memories of Cleveland. Perhaps she still remembers the pool party, the laughter of friends, the short walk that should have been safe. Or perhaps the truth lies buried in silence, waiting for the day it will finally be uncovered. What remains certain is this: Ashley Summers is not forgotten. Her name continues to echo through time, carried by her family, her city, and now by us, telling her story so it will not fade into dust. And if you believe, like we do, that stories like Ashley's deserve to be heard, so that no child's disappearance is ever erased from memory, then help us keep that light alive. Give this video a like, share it with others, and subscribe to Vanished in America Story. Together, we can make sure Ashley's story and the stories of countless others are never lost to silence.